there was a Switch game in progress for Neopets. I know it was canned, or at least it was rumored that it was canned about 2 years ago. And a lot of people on Reddit still talk about it. I've seen comments on Discord, and I'm curious now that the company's going in a new direction. If the whole concept of moving to video game consoles is still a possibility, or what really?
Yeah, I would say if we were to enter the video console kind of like segment, Switch will definitely be kind of like top of mind. But I would say it's probably more like a medium term type of initiative that we're looking at. I mean, our near term focus has always been fixing the classic site as much as possible in a relatively short time frame, and also working on a few experiences that we've been building on a mobile gaming side. And I think on the Switch side, I think the previous project it didn't really go anywhere, to be honest. But we are exploring kind of like going back into Switch, but it will require like a much bigger investment and also like probably a much larger team if we were to take that on. So we are exploring what options we have. For example, like whether this whole Switch initiative should it be more like a new initiatives in the company? Can we find community members to help, or can we license it out to like other studios to help to work with us and do co-production? So we are trying to explore what might be the most feasible way, but I would say it's definitely something on the horizon. But it's not like something that we have committed and found a solution to it yet.
What's been the biggest undertaking, taking over this whole IP? Because it's been in so many hands. It was controlled by Viacom, of course, the original creators, and other companies in between. So how do you just take over this kind of franchise that's, tinker with something that's been so many hands really, and make it your own?
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of the challenge and what's most exciting about this whole Neopets IP and kind of like the turnaround and revival that we're working at. So I think the problem actually stems from being like so many ownership changes in the past like 10, 15 years. And then every time an acquisition happens, some files are lost. We lost access to some of the original source codes, or we kind of like lost access to some of the side games and side quests and stuff like that. And then I would say the IP and the company has been probably not of management focus for the past, I don't know, past 10 years. So it's been in a slowly decaying mode, and really kind of like the near term focus is really to at least stop that, reverse, and kind of like build it back to its glory days. And a big part of that is actually working a lot more closely with our community members, which collectively they probably have all the knowledge we need to restart or reboot or revive a lot of things that's not currently working on the site. So a big part of that is part of what we call it like fix the classic site, like the original neopets.com browser-based game, and fixing that and making sure that lapsed users coming back and existing users who are still playing can have a much more enjoyable experience, and that nostalgic factor would hit it home.
I've seen a lot of people that played it back in the day. They want to get back in their accounts, and they can't find the original passwords, or maybe they don't use those emails anymore. And I understand that a lot of those people like remain locked out because there's like a black market of people who sell, the old Neopets accounts for money. And I was wondering if there's any way to get around that for those people who, generally just want to get back in their account, or if it's just impossibly lost in time. Yeah.
Yeah, so the challenge we're facing is that there's a fine balance between helping the genuine users to come back who are locked out and get access back to their account, and also preventing kind of like the scammers and people who are trying to reselling accounts to try to steal accounts from other players. So what has happened is like there has been kind of like security leaks. For example, like people have access to probably our like other users, kind of like, oh, their username or like the email and stuff like that. So there has been multiple leaks in the past, which is kind of like circulated among the community members. So because of that reason, that also leads to kind of like the existing challenge of kind of like the balance between the two. So we are looking into that, and we will be announcing kind of a new set of kind of like account recovery or account access, kind of like a standard procedure. And as part of that, we'll be also doing an overhaul of our kind of like customer service standard operating procedure to churn through a lot more of these tickets, which are coming in, and we have been receiving a lot more tickets since kind of like the latest announcement of Neopets is reviving. So we are seeing kind of like our returning users coming back, and one of the main issues for them is to get their account back. So I think in the coming week we will be announcing a lot more about how things could be handled, and hope that would change the situation.
Would literal IDs help or anything like that? Not that I'm not sure if people would literally send their driver's license, but
Well, I mean, some of our users could be very desperate. They're very much in love with the IP and they want to get their account back. But with something like that, we just have to make sure we're not collecting too much like privacy, like private information, and making sure the process is we're kind of like protecting our users as well. But I would say there are more sensitive accounts that we're still very cautious about. But like for the less sensitive accounts, we are trying to make it easier for users to come back.
there was rumors of Neopets cartoon show in the works. I think it was around a year ago. Is that still happening? Has that been shelved, or what's the status on that?
So there has been kind of like multiple conversations going on regarding like with different partners on whether that could come to fruition. I think the specific one that has been rumored about is probably shelved, but based on my understanding, we are exploring kind of like new partnerships to could bring this idea. But as I mentioned, these are some things that we probably can't do it ourselves. So we'll be working with partners who have the right expertise and are willing to kind of like work very closely with us to produce something. So yeah, I mean, I don't have any concrete to share, but I think if we can get Neopets on the big screen, either as an animation series or even like a potentially a movie down the road, is definitely something we would love to explore.
Is there interest in bringing back the original creators in any way? I mean, I know one of them has said she doesn't want to be a part of it anymore on Discord, but is there any interest in that and bringing back original members or even from the Viacom era? I'm not sure who's currently the developers in the team. So
Yeah, so we do have actually some of the more like original artists or designers involved either in a different capacity. So some have signed up as like a brand ambassador or like and then more like an advisory role, giving us kind of like more knowledge from the early days. So we have been a lot more proactively reaching out to these original kind of like creative team members to help us to revive certain parts of Neopets. But a lot of our team members existingly working are also has been around with the company for quite a long time. So I would say we still have a lot of guidance and advice from these kind of like OG team members.
is a lot of the infrastructure issues that happened around all the years is because Adobe Flash kind of went out of style and everything had to be remade on some level to HTML5 and all that, or
Yeah, so they're kind of like a due process on that front. So when Adobe Flash kind of like is gone in December 2020, it's kind of like overnight. It's broken. It's not working. So what we've been doing is converting a lot of those to HTML5, but the effort takes it's quite a lot of effort. So what we've done in parallel in the past few months is working, for example, with open source like software providers like Ruffle to as an emulator to bring back a lot of our mini games. So at least that gave us kind of like another option to kind of really let the site to be a lot more enjoyable. So we have now over 100 mini games that's playable compared to like 3 months ago where we only have like 15. So that's a huge jump when we kind of like find these alternative solution to bring back some of the content that it's mainly built on Flash.
I saw a lot of fans were really excited when they got the initial email that, all these changes were happening. And I was wondering where do you see Neopets in a year or two? What are you guys working on right now? Yeah.
So I think so I think it's a multi-pillar strategy that we're working on. I think in the near term, we're trying to fix the classic site as much as possible in a reasonable time frame. So as fixing the classic site is mainly a few things. So first of all, we're still converting a lot of the pages to make it more mobile friendly and make it more consistent. As it currently stands, a lot of the pages are like there's kind of like split in two camps. Some of the pages are still in kind of like a classic view. Some of the pages has been converted. That's more mobile friendly. And then there's also kind of like many pages that are just broken and because it's built on Flash and it's not working. So we're trying to convert a lot of those into HTML5, at least for the more highly visited pages. We're definitely kind of like working on that. And in parallel, we're also trying to work a lot more closely with Ruffles to see whether there are other pages that we can bring back. But of course, there are challenges like with like, for example, sending scores and like kind of like communicating with the rest of the site and etc. So it is true that we're building on a 24-year-old infrastructure where there a lot of these small things might not seem very obvious at first, but when we actually implement changes, it takes a while. So that's kind of like all the pillar, like the first main pillar, which is fixing the classic site. So the second pillar is actually where we're also trying to bring in, build kind of like new game experiences. So that's for us to extend Neopets into a multi-generation IP. We do need new game experiences that are attractive to our returning users or lapsed users or even new users who've never played Neopets in the past. So that's kind of where we're also trying to invest in to make sure that we're stay relevant. It's not just a nostalgic IP with a 24-year-old game kind of like sitting on a browser-based kind of experience. So for the new game experiences, we are trying to kind of like modernize Neopets in a way that it's relevant. So it will be like mobile experiences. As part of that pillar, we're also exploring new technologies that we can bring in. So whether we build on whether like what we've discussed previously, like should we be building on Switch? Should we be working on bringing kind of like new ways of building fun games into these new experiences? So that's mainly the second pillar. And the second pillar is probably something that's a lot more like medium to longer term. I mean, it takes years to build a great game. And then, so we are kind of like some of the new games are more casual and hyper casual than those we can bring out first. For example, we are planning to relaunch Island Builder as like a side game, town building game. And also we have a match 3 game called Fairy's Hope. So these are things that has been built in the past for the past 2-3 years. So there are things that we're trying to tie in more and bring back and hopefully use that to attract our labs users who left the classic site but might be interested to still engage with different Neopets games. So that's mainly the second pillar. And the last pillar of what we're trying to do is actually to revive the IP and kind of like give the whole brand a new by rebuilding the licensing and merchandise business, which in the past we have been very successful. Like we have like really great merch in the past, and some of the merch like sells very well. And rebuilding that part would also be helping us to reach a lot of our lapsed users and through kind of like the mass market retailers and getting our lapsed users to come re-engage with the IP. And I think that's kind of the last pillar as well. So we're kind of like going through these 3 main pillar strategy to focus on bringing Neopets and reviving the whole IP as a whole.
Are you still working on the Neopets metaverse that was rumored, or what's going on with that? The Neopets metaverse.
Yeah, so for the Neopets metaverse, So for that, we're is part of the kind of like the second pillar strategy. So we've announced that we'll be stopping the Neopets Metaverse project specifically, but we are reusing a lot of the kind of like 3D assets and kind of like the in-game design, which are less like crypto related or like to build a new modernized simulation game. So we're recycling a lot of what we've been building into a new game that will still continue to work on.
Is it true that prior to the current takeover that the company was operating, or Neopets was operating on a loss for many years, basically, and that's why a lot of fixes weren't applied, and yeah.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I mean that's basically that's very true. That's one of the main reason why we want to restructure the whole kind of like the company structure. And it's so on a few things is like so that the team could be a lot more agile and really kind of have more independence in driving at the most important things for both the community and for the company and also for the whole IP as a whole. I think in the past, Neopets hasn't been of main kind of like managerial focus of the top, like the senior management, but also as part of a larger corporate entity. It just hasn't been receiving the care and really driving it to a much more cohesive kind of like there's no cohesive like strategy or there's no cohesive kind of like planning to really unleash the value. So what the team has been doing is that everyone has been working really hard to keep the company afloat, even when Neopets is in such a dire situation. So I mean, all our team members are very passionate about the IP and they're very excited, just like the community is, that we're finally, hopefully, doing something that we can bring back and rebuild Neopets back to its glory days.
Do you have someone actively reading the Neopets Reddit and the Discord channel and all that to see what fans say, or you mostly scan Twitter? Or how's it go?
Yeah, so we are trying to collect as much feedback as possible, and I mean we understand that there's like numerous threads that are discussing and giving us feedback. So we try to collect as much as possible, but to be honest, they're probably just more channels than we have like enough like staff to really go through those. But we have been trying to establish more transparency between the company, the TNT team, and also the community. So things that we're doing, for example, like we're doing like more like AMAs, more transparency on that front. We've been sending out more surveys to collect feedback so that we can get all the advice we need from the community. But we understand that there's still a lot of threads out there discussing on kind of like all types of problems that the site still have. But there are a lot of great comments, to be honest. We'd love to have a more systematic way to collect these feedback and help us kind of like plan into our and help us with the execution.
Do you still foresee that this IP has a potential to? I mean, I know Viacom wanted it to essentially be Pokemon at one point, which is a very lofty, once in a lifetime goal. But what do you foresee as the potential? Even like 5 years from now, for this IP to grow to?
So I think there's two main differentiation about kind of like the Neopets IP as compared to like other IPs that are of similar caliber. So one is that our user base, although like Neopets has been like a very kid-friendly, inclusive site, but most of our core users has grown up with the IP. For a 24-year-old IP, like most of our core users are not kids anymore. So they're all like young adults or like they're like yeah, they're kind of like midlife already actually. So we need to understand that these are our core community. So if we're trying too hard to position Neopets as like a childish kids IP, it wouldn't work because it doesn't resonate with our user base. I mean, a lot of our users, a lot of our fans love the cuteness of Neopets, but there's actually a lot more deeper kind of like emotional attachment with Neopets because the creativity that's put behind it, and then the amount of breadth and depth of the original game, Neopets.com. There's just so much you can do. There's so many ways for you to express yourself. And back then, although all of us started as a kid playing Neopets, but we need to remember that when we first played Neopets, we're actually all the cool kids in town, and we're kind of ahead of the whole gaming industry when Neopets is basically kind of like the first kind of like game, like social media is like predating like MySpace and Facebook. It's actually a very active online community where it inspired a generation of users to really explore the world of internet through a game. And I think we need to understand the nuances, and Neopets, although it's like very cute and everything, it's actually a much an IP that has a lot more depth to it. And bringing Neopets back actually is what we want to achieve, is reconnecting to our roots and actually the DNA of what made Neopets so special. And I think that's also explains the reason why, as an IP, we're able to survive like so many years, even after so much like hiccups and like I mean, to be honest, is not the best run like company in the world in the past. And we're hopefully, but the community is what, and the community and the team is basically what kept Neopets afloat. And we see a lot of value in that, and we believe that there's a lot more that could be done. That type of emotional attachment and brand awareness that we have.
Is there still a virtual concert planned? As I've seen some users comment that was rumored. I don't know how they work out, but I mean, they have those in Splatoon, so.
No, I mean, we are definitely always exploring ways to kind of have the Neopets IP to be enjoyed in different ways. So whether it be like a virtual concert or kind of like an animation series or other new experiences that we're trying to bring, we're definitely exploring on all fronts. So there has been rumors on all fronts, to be honest, because while we're trying to modernize this IP, we want to make sure that we stay relevant. But on the other hand, we want to make sure that we're investing in the right avenues. That's kind of like give us the best bang of the buck, and really making sure that with our limited, like scarce resources, we're putting our focus on the most important things that can really help build Neopets back. So a long-winded way of saying that we are exploring all fronts, like virtual concert. We're not ruling it out. We are exploring whether it's plausible, and it's whether it's something that our community actually wants, compared to if we use the same budget to do something else. So yeah, we're very well, we're very agile in a way, but because we're exploring so many different fronts, there ought to be a lot of rumors going out in the community. But at the end of the day, what we need to do is we need to prioritize. We need to stay laser focused on the most important task in hand, and really kind of like deploy our scarce resources accordingly. But I would say we are trying to work a lot more closely with the community. So these are areas where we love to get more feedback and make sure that whatever we deliver and whatever we execute on is actually something that would be loved by our community.
How did you first get into Neopets? Something you played when you were younger, as I understand it? Yeah.
Yeah, so I played Neopets. Well, kind of like when I first moved back to Hong Kong, I actually lost contact with a lot of my childhood like friends in Canada. Because back then there's no social media, there's only like a landline phone number that we can call, and IDD used to be so expensive. So it's actually hard to stay connected back then. And then my friend from Canada one day invited me to play Neopets when it first came out, or like shortly after it first came out. And then I just got hooked to it for a couple of years, and it's a major avenue for me to reconnect with my childhood friends. And then it actually gave me a very interesting kind of a childhood, because I'm way ahead of the curve. Because Neopets only caught on popularity in Hong Kong like after 2 3 years after it became so big in the US. So I'm like one of the first kids to have played it and have accumulated a lot more knowledge in it. So I remember back then I was like kind of like the cool kid in town, being like way ahead of the curve, and so it's a very interesting childhood memory. And that's kind of how I first started. And to be honest, like I haven't played like I would say as much as a lot of our core users in the past 10 years. But like when I first joined NetDragon a few years back, the original parent company of Neopets, who owns like Jumpstart, the company. So I understand that Neopets is an IP that they own, and that definitely is one of the reasons and one of the things that kept me excited when I joined NetDragon. And I slowly got more involved with the business unit that owns this Neopets IP, and I kind of like start digging around. And two years ago, a little bit less than 2 years ago, I start leading this Neopets Metaverse project as a side project to kind of just get my hands like dirty and working on the Neopets IP, and that's when I kind of like embarked on this whole journey that eventually led me here.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. I appreciate your time.